And we are back to rain. Hi, welcome to Brimwood Farm, and after a couple of days of heavy frost, where in fact my pipes in the caravan froze so I had no water, we're back to slightly milder weather and rainy weather. And I thought today we would just have a quick look at some of the wildlife pond, and how the year has progressed here on the REWILDING farm. So earlier this year I built this bird hide, and the idea was that I could rent it out, I could sit in it, I could watch across the wildflower meadow field and see what wildlife is available and what comes on to sight. Now the truth of the matter is I haven't had any time to sit in this bird hide whatsoever. And in front of where the bird hide is, I wanted to put a little watering hole because my other two ponds on the property are kind of overgrown, and also there's a lot more human interaction. I'm in those fields a lot more with the animals, and this field is a lot more out of the way. It's the furthest field away on my property, and so it's the field probably where most wildlife that may be feeling worried about human interaction is going to be. So I put in this little pond here. Now the sides have grown in really nicely. You can see we've had quite a bit of ice because it's still quite broken. The only slight problem with this site is I hadn't realised quite how waterlogged the ground would get. So where we have the pond liner, you can see over here, if I walk over to it, it's kind of bubbled up. Oh God, I'm going to fall over. It's bubbled up, and that's not because there's air underneath. That's because there's water underneath. And so I think at some point I'm going to have to buy a load of shingle and bring it and just weigh this plastic down. It will look nicer as well, of course, with the shingle over the top of the black plastic. But what I found is in the summer it was fine because the ground dried out. I filled the pond up from the water butt that we have there. I have a hose line that runs underneath the ground and runs into the pond. You can just see it here, look. But in the winter, as soon as it gets a little bit wet, it bubbles up underneath and lifts the liner. So I definitely need to get some shingle in here. The other thing I need to do is I'm going to move the bird feeder. Now this bird feeder did a great job at attracting birds, especially in the spring and the summer months. And I had the camera located just here. However, when it gets windy, it wriggles a lot, and it means the camera is wriggling a lot and it's constantly taking photos. So I've relocated the camera to the bird hide. It's just up here, look. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to also move this closer to the bird hide, because the problem is this is now too far away to capture any of the birds and songbirds and thrushes and pigeons and things that might come along and eat some of the food off there. Now I haven't been very organised here because I've actually run out of birdseed, wild birdseed. So I've just used some of my gut chicken garden blend, which has got some corn, some cracked peas, some maize, etc. in, and I'm sure a lot of the wildlife around here will enjoy that. And then I will come back and I will fill up the feeders with wild birdseed and some of those lovely fat balls. So what about the wildlife? Well, I have in the past few days caught this little group of young bucks standing by the pond, and you can see actually they are practicing their rutting. I think they're too young. I think these boys are too young to actually rut this year and get their own harem of hinds, but you can see they are definitely practicing putting their horns to the ground. And in the background on the perch above the pond there's also a owl. I would think it's a tawny, because it's dark, it's the middle of the night. Barn owls are crepuscular, so they hunt at dawn and dusk. Now I do love the deer, and seeing them is wonderful, and that's what I want. I want deer and wildlife coming onto the property, but I have planted a lot of trees in this field, and unfortunately they do tend to come in and kill them. I had some quite big rowan and wild plum whips that I put in, and because it was early in the season, they were the largest thing to be seen. They stood up, and you can see they have ring barked them, and they have eaten them and now dead. Hey, a quick interruption to let you know that the 2024 Brunwood Farm calendar is now available. I'll drop a link in the description below. I've done a limited print run, so please, if you do want one, head to the website and grab one ASAP. A, before they run out, and B, so I can try and get them shipped to you before Christmas. Now back to the video. Not all of the trees have suffered though. There's quite a few oaks and hawthorns that have made it, and some of the smaller cornus and beech plants that are in protectors have kind of got through the first couple of years. They have been nibbled though and stunted, so I think I'm just going to have to keep growing and putting in more and more and more trees, and eventually there'll be enough that the deer won't ruin everything. And of course, as often is the way, I have been planting trees on this side of the field because I want to link the wood, which isn't on my property. I want to kind of link it across the field. Mother Nature, however, has had other ideas, and so she has been planting her own trees on this side. So actually there's a lot of small trees that have been left alone by the deer on this side. So it's definitely a balancing act of where I want to put stuff and where Mother Nature wants to put stuff, because often where Mother Nature puts it and where our jays and our squirrels take nuts and bury them, and then they grow into small trees and saplings and then large trees, often they're in the better place and they're the ones that are more likely to survive. So a balancing act. There's also been a couple of red foxes using the path through the fields past the bird hide, and as you can see from the timestamp, it's actually the middle of the day, which as a farmer who keeps poultry is quite important for me to take note of. In the middle of the summer, when there is a lot of food around, I don't have to worry too much, but in the spring when there are cubs, and in the autumn winter when food sources may be waning a little bit, it's really important to take even more care of the poultry. And now I'm on site, of course, the dogs are out most of the day, which means there's going to be a lot more safety around the coop for the chickens. And as well as the dogs, I've also been letting the geese out. Now the geese are normally in this little chicken tractor, but in the daytime I've been letting them out because, again, because I'm now on site, geese are pretty good if there's a predator nearby, and they will start squawking, which means I can get up if the dogs are all inside with me, for example, because it's wet and it's cold like today. I can come out and check that everybody's all right. There's also been quite an exciting spot with these Chinese water deer. Now, I was never expecting to see Chinese water deer on my land. Earlier this year, probably spring, I saw one individual right over in this field somewhere, and then as you can see here on the footage, there are two, and they actually are regular visitors now to this water hole. They do spend most of the time now in this field, which is the field that runs across the road, and they tend to sort of hunker down in all of this these weeds and this natural growth along the edge of the hedgerow here, and with the bird hide right behind us. Rewilding is a funny one. I have had not a lot, but a few negative comments from local farmers about this field, about how it needs to be topped, how, oh, that's not the way we would do things, we wouldn't let it get to that mess. I don't see it as a mess. I see it as a glorious wildlife habitat. Now, I could just top it, as in many fields, like where I graze the sheep most of the year, but then you do end up with just very close cropped grass. And though that can be a habitat, I still get flocks of starlings coming down and pulling worms. There's the odd carrion crow and magpie hopping across. It doesn't really provide shelter. It doesn't provide a diverse food source for stuff. I just don't see the range of wildlife in it that I do in this field. When it was really frosty, this field looked amazing because all of the frost had clung to all of the seed heads and the old spent stalks of dock. And you would think, oh, this is going to look terrible next year, but actually it doesn't, because all of this stuff breaks down, goes into the soil, it becomes organic matter, which then even more regenerates the pasture. And at this time of year, especially for the sheep, there isn't much nutrition in grass, and I find the sheep grazing in this field and they're picking at the weeds and the dock leaves and all of the sorts of plants they wouldn't ordinarily get if they were just being grazed on flat grass. So they're getting a much more varied diet. They also hunker down when it's bad weather. They hunker down amongst the weeds and kind of find a bit of shelter. And then the amount of birds that flit through, they don't fly across the top, they flit through the undergrowth. Goldfinches, thrushes, blue tits, the red polar back. It's rather marvellous. Most of the trees now have dropped their leaves, but these oak trees have just kept on. Oh, don't they look magnificent, honestly? The colour, the fiery colour, and when the sunset, when it's not like this, it's clear skies and the sunset comes down behind them, magical. I am slightly looking forward to spring because as you know from the last video, the pigs are inside because of the mud, but I can't wait to have the sows and their piglets over in this paddock, ferreting around under the oak tree, nice sty full of straw. It'll be so nice. But for now, they're in the dry in the barn.